Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching Focal Length, where we get you a briefing on topics from across the world. Armenia and Azerbaijan have signed a historic peace deal at the White House, with US President Donald Trump positioning himself as the chief mediator. Critical questions emerge about the future of the South Caucasus. Is this truly a turning point in Armenian-Azerbaijani relations or a high-stakes political performance? How is the Armenian public reacting to Trump's involvement, and what role does the breakdown in Azerbaijan-Russia ties play in reshaping the regional balance of power? Dr. Gevorg Melikyan, founder of the Armenian Institute for Resilience and Statecraft and former advisor to the President of Armenia, joins us to unpack the deeper implications of the proposed treaty. A scholar of hybrid warfare, global alliances and critical statecraft, he brings rare insights into the high-stakes diplomacy now reshaping the South Caucasus. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us, Dr. Gevorg Melikyan. My first question to you, let's start with the big news. Armenia and Azerbaijan have signed a peace deal at the White House. What's your initial reaction to this major development?
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. It's indeed a very important event that took place, I would say, yesterday, according to Armenian time, in Washington, D.C., something that we were expecting for many, many years. I mean, the peace deal. But the problem here appears just immediately after the signing this joint declaration, because as you can understand, it's not a peace deal per se, but just initialing a memorandum, which is a good thing, but it paves the way to new developments that we have still to follow and to see what is the impact of these processes on the long term, on the peace process and the stability in the region, because this region has always been involved in many conflicts, in many bloody conflicts. And just recently, like 2 years ago, Azerbaijan launched another attack against the peaceful population of Nagorno-Karabakh, and they also have been blockading people, and people were starving there. So, and suddenly we cannot understand how it comes that a democracy like the US is backing an autocracy like Azerbaijan. So there are many, many questions. So if you want, I can elaborate more on that. Or if you have other questions, please you give it to me those questions.
Moving on, do you believe the Trump-led summit genuinely represents a turning point in Armenian-Azerbaijani relations, or could this be a more symbolic gesture?
No, it's not a symbolic thing, because according to this memorandum, to this joint declaration, a part of Armenia wrote, which they labeled as TRIP, Trump Road for Prosperity and International Peace and Prosperity, acronym TRIP. It gives an opportunity and gives the legal rights to Azerbaijan to cross the Armenian territory without any Armenian control, although there are discussions how it will function, but we still don't have the text, the full text of technical details, how it will happen, how it will operate. So that's why basically it means the corridor which Azerbaijan was claiming after the 2020 war, that Armenia as a losing part should concede a part of its territory to Azerbaijan to link the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku, with the enclave of Azerbaijan, which on the eastern part of Armenia. Basically, they want to cut Armenia in the middle and not to have any control by Armenian customs services and border control, and which means that it becomes something a tunnel, a corridor, and Armenia will not gain anything from that besides the fact that maybe this corridor will make Azerbaijan to refrain from attacking directly Armenia if Armenia agrees to concede, for example, to the demands of Azerbaijan to change the constitution, to accept a return of so-called refugees from Azerbaijan, which means that like kind of 300,000 people from Azerbaijan will come to Armenia. So this is just the beginning of what people labeled as breakthrough. So on the paper, everything can be fine, but on the reality on the ground, as many other conflicts, including the conflict between Israel and Iran, between many other countries like Ukraine and Russia, it's not that simple in international relations just to solve problems by putting some signatures. I don't want to say that it's completely impossible, but it's most impossible than possible. So we can be cautiously optimistic about reaching some peace because we all want peace in the region. It's really very tough to live in the region, which can be victim of bloodshed wars and conflicts in the broader Middle East. But the reality is much more complicated and much more colorful than it can be in American Hollywood movies. So not everything has a happy end, you know. And then this is an unfortunate news. So I hope that Armenia and Azerbaijan will really find ways to establish peace. But peace is a two-side street, and it needs both sides to commit, to engage, to put all efforts. But for Azerbaijan, the most and foremost, the most important thing was to get that corridor and not to care about opening the all other roads and withdraw the blockade that Azerbaijan and Turkey are imposing against Armenia. This is the main point. If all communications, all infrastructure were opened, and we had finally a peace deal and also establishing diplomatic relations with Azerbaijan would be a great move. Well, some experts would say that it's just the beginning, it will start. But even in the joint declaration, we don't see anything about prisoners of war that are in Baku, held in Baku, Armenian prisoners of war. There is nothing about the occupation of Azerbaijan of about 200 square kilometers of Armenian lands. And there is nothing about establishing diplomatic relations. Those things are pillars and main obstacles to establishing real peace, lasting peace, durable peace, dignified peace, not just peace, meaning that they are not skirmishes, they are not killings, which is also important, but is just one part of the big story.
Can you speak to the level of trust the Armenian public has in this peace process, especially with Trump as a mediator?
Yeah. This process divided the Armenian society into two big camps, and there is a clear division inside of the society, which is not a good thing. One part is believing that everything, let's to be simple, let's put it simply, everything is fine, and that signing this peace deal or it's not even signing a peace deal, but initialing or pre-signing a memorandum of understanding that they will probably in the near future or somewhere in the future to sign a real peace deal, because it's not a real peace deal. It's just a performance. It's a show. So another part, which is less optimistic, more cautious, more skeptical about, first of all, about Trump, that Trump is able in any way to establish peace in third countries, because he failed in Ukrainian-Russian deal. Maybe, at least for now, it is not really going into the right direction, at least from the American perspective. The war is still on the ground. And Trump is not a good mediator. He's not a good broker of peace, as many can think. And this is the situation in Armenia. Those who are pro-governmental, let's say, those part of the society, they have this euphoria, this joy, and I can understand them, of course. I mean, people are waiting for the peace for a long time. And the other side, as I said, is less optimistic, more skeptical. And I listed all the obstacles that we still have. And they mainly refer to that obstacle, that those obstacles still remain. Like, for example, how Azerbaijan is imposing on the Armenian government to change the constitution. It is called the hybrid warfare tactics. When not shooting a bullet, you make your enemy, your adversary, to obey to your demands. So basically, the war is still ongoing, but in different ways. It is transformed into hybrid warfare. So the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan is still in a hot phase. This is the problem. So, and this created a clear division inside of the society.
Staying with Armenia, do the public still view Karabakh as a lost homeland, or is the national sentiment shifting towards pragmatism and future stability?
Nagorno-Karabakh remains the pillar, let's say, the core of the problem between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And for some people in Armenia, when Armenia lost its control over Nagorno-Karabakh, they think that it's over and we should not go to be in the past, but we should look at the future. We should look forward. But on the other side, on the other part of the society, is still thinking that Nagorno-Karabakh remains part of Armenia's homeland, and not only the just sentimental, emotional part, but it's a very important part of Armenia's security architecture, because Armenia is different with Karabakh and without Nagorno-Karabakh. These are completely two different security architecture. Without Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia basically is losing its strategic depth. This is a military term to define what is the level of maneuverability of a country when it's facing an enemy like Azerbaijan. In this case, if Azerbaijan is attacking Armenia, it cannot withdraw its troops and its population to somewhere to a safer place, because it's a very narrow place. So with Nagorno-Karabakh, it was completely different strategic depths, and without Nagorno-Karabakh, it's completely different. And also from the economic point of view, without Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia, could take a lot of resources from Nagorno-Karabakh. Now it's over. And also there are many other problems linked to Nagorno-Karabakh, not just as a land, but because there are claims by Azerbaijan, and they are claims in the international courts to request billions of dollars of so-called restitution, recompensing Armenia's so-called occupation. And this is completely distorted interpretation of what happened at the beginning of the 90s, when the Soviet Union collapsed and Azerbaijan decided to use force, like Russia is using force against Ukraine for their independence claims, or Russia was using force against Chechnya when Chechnya was trying to get independence from Russia. By the same way, Nagorno-Karabakh, which was never part of Azerbaijan, but it was part of Soviet Azerbaijan, Lenin's Azerbaijan, let's say. And now suddenly international community as well recognizes that Lenin's Soviet Union was something great, and those borders that they've been defined by Lenin and then by Stalin can serve as basis for building new relations in the modern world. It sounds crazy, and even in the declaration of Trump, there is a reference to Almaty Declaration, which is the breakout of the Soviet Union, basically legitimizing the breakup of the Soviet Union, and Americans are referring to the Soviet Union document to talk about Armenia-Azerbaijan relations. This world is becoming really crazy, and Trump is hitting this crazy world in an unknown direction.
So we know the peace treaty is now signed. In your opinion, what's next? What are the first practical steps needed to normalize relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
First, we have to see what kind of technical details appear after this declaration, and how they plan to see American consortium or a company. We don't know. We don't have the text. How they will come to Armenia, and how they will squeeze out Russian soldiers, Russian military presence in the same region. And Iranians, this is the Iranian border. So it sounds more chaotic than it sounds like a plan. But we have to wait. I don't want to make some predictions, because nobody knows, at least the larger audience. We don't have the details about this, how it will function. So this is the most interesting part, how they think, Armenians and Azeris, that a third company or third country can control the flow of cars, of cargo. This is the first time probably in the modern world that something like this is happening. And this will either fail completely, or they will just tell to Armenian side, sorry guys, thank you, but you have not to have any control, any surveillance on that border, but the corridor. So thank you and goodbye. We will see. Let's see, because we also are eager to understand what will happen with Armenia, because this is it is clear that Armenia, Azerbaijan took what they wanted, at least partially. Trump is getting what he wants, and the question is what is getting Armenia from all this, let's say, processes.
Yes, and building on that, we're seeing an unprecedented breakdown in Azerbaijan-Russia relations. Do you believe this has weakened Moscow's leverage in the region? And if so, how should Armenia position itself strategically?
Well, it's a very, very tricky question. And for many, many months, even not years, experts and journalistic community and policymakers are discussing this topic, whether Russia is out of the region. So it's a black and white understanding of big politics, of geopolitics. Nothing happening in this way. It's not either you are there or you are out of there. No, it's not like that. Well, Russia is, I think that if Americans really come to the region, besides about the chaos it will create on the ground, let's don't talk about that. But geopolitically, it's very difficult to understand how Iranians, they have a consulate in that part. France has a consulate there. Russians are there, and now Americans are there. European Union has a mission, observing mission there. So it's becoming a really a chaotic and situation in that small part of Armenia, and it's not only about Russia but also about Iran. And Russia is, I think, in my opinion, is changing its tactics, and it's not trying to be directly involved, but it's still keeping its own leverages, especially the economic leverage. Armenia is almost fully dependent economically on Russia and on Russia-led institutions like Eurasian Economic Union, like CSTO, like Commonwealth of Independent States, and many others, and many other documents. Armenia has signed with Russia about more than 200 strategically important documents. Why we don't have even one document signed with the US and the European Union? Strategically important documents. So we will see the reaction of Russia. I think that they will not react immediately, but they will wait. They will wait to see what is happening, and then they probably will make some steps. But again, it's our problem is not maybe Russia, but our problem is it's how Armenia is accepting to become a sort of client state of Azerbaijan, which is becoming a dominant nation in the South Caucasus with its oil and money, bribing and lobbying for its interests all over the world, including the US. And this is what we are worried about, the future of Armenia.
Well, thank you ever so much, Dr. Melikyan, for speaking to us today on Focal Length. With that, it's a wrap on this episode. For more international news updates, make sure to stay tuned here on NewsX World.